Morning everyone. We want to start this talk by trying to relate it to you practically. So if you are currently suffering from depression or anxiety, the objective is to help you identify some tips, some ideas that will enable you to recover, fully recover, and to be able to live in a normal sort of world. That's the objective for you. And to do that, I've got about 2 to 2.5 hours of sharing. It's hard to get across all the concepts, all the key ideas that are important for a recovery. But those conditions are recoverable, they are manageable in almost every case. I want to recommend the Depression Recovery Program and the material that goes with it. If you are interested in more detail, this DVD set by Neil Nedley is extremely valuable, and it's a lot longer than the sessions we'll be doing here. His program has a manual and also a textbook. This is a program that Steps to Life runs regularly and is quite detailed on the subject of depression. A lot of things that relate to depression do overlap with anxiety, as we'll discover today. And I'm hoping to point you to some other resources as we go through this talk to enable me to try and give you some more clues and ideas. If you don't suffer from depression and anxiety, then you can look at this as a vaccination program to enable you to learn some habits and some ways to so that doesn't hopefully come along in your life. And if you're here because you have a friend or a family member who is suffering, then hopefully you will be able to get some ideas to point them in the right direction or some materials that can help them. These conditions are very common. In fact, depression is supposed to be the commonest long-term, non-infectious disorder worldwide currently. So it's a very common disorder, and then anxiety is probably right up there with it as well. Now, if you've got a problem with anxiety, I want to tell you something that I have found very useful. Where I work at in the Integrative Medical Clinic, we do a lot of testing on minerals, hair, a mineral analysis, and urine in particular. And for toxicology, urine mineral analysis is gold standard worldwide, especially after you've had what we call a provocative chelating agent. But we find a very interesting pattern with people who have trouble with two things, anxiety and mood swings. On our elemental analysis, they have 0 lithium. This lithium is nil. So other people have lithium scored. So when lithium comes back nil, I often will ask them, do you have a problem with anxiety or mood swings? And almost always they say yes. In fact, I can't remember one that said no. Lithium is used, of course, in psychiatry in megadoses to treat manic depression and bipolar. You know, lithium carbonate, it's pretty toxic. In fact, it is toxic, in my opinion, at that dose. But lithium is actually a natural elemental substance. It's in the metals group of elements. And if you suffer from anxiety or mood swings, you may wish to try a microscopically small dose of lithium, which is 5 milligrams mg. We recommend lithium orotate, and you can get it off the internet. It's very cheap, and it's quite non-toxic. It has a few possible side effects. It can give rarely acne in ladies, and also it can cause thyroid disturbance. I've never seen either of those documented in any of the numbers that I've used it with, but they are there. When you suffer from a sudden loss of a loved one, in my opinion, it's equivalent to walking on life and suddenly falling into a hole. That's what it feels like. Of course, if it's something you're expecting, then you've got a chance to get ready for the hole. But if it's unexpected, you just plop straight in. And so it varies on the severity. And recovering from a sudden grief like that, it might not be the loss of a loved one. That's probably one of the biggest ones. It might be some other grief. Loss of health can be a big grief experience. Recovering from a loss is like climbing out of a hole. If you never get out of a hole, that will give you depression or anxiety because you're stuck in the hole. Okay, so the objective when you suffer a grief is you acknowledge I'm in the hole. Okay, I mean, that's normal. But then you need to say you need to climb out. You need to climb out of a hole. How do you do that? Well, we need to acknowledge changed circumstances in our lives. Part of climbing out of a hole is adapting to the changed circumstances. And that, of course, will vary tremendously depending on what it is. I had a patient who, for example, their dog died, and that caused an absolute meltdown. This was a lady who had fertility problems and not been able to conceive, and basically the dog had become her surrogate child, which was a pretty much toxic relationship with a dog, if you ask me. But when the dog died, she had the same grief reaction as if her child had died, and that resulted in a major meltdown. And part of her adapting was to learn the fact that a dog is different from a child. Okay, that was part of her adaptation. Now, it wouldn't be just quick rush out, grab another dog and pull it in, there you go. That would not solve the problem properly.
Okay, it seems like we are ready to start this little cooking session. How many here like cooking? Good. Can I see the hands of the men that likes cooking?
Oh, that's good.
Wonderful. We have a few of them.
Great.
So, today we are going to make something that I've called hazelnut carob treats. I want to show them to you before I even start. Doesn't that look quite good? So, Lorna is going to help me to do the hard work, I hope. And that is the blending. That's the things that can go wrong. So she's very kind to help me with this. I'll read the recipe. Maybe I'll have Lorna to do it because her English is a bit better than mine.
1 cup of hazelnuts, and these have been just lightly roasted in the oven, just dry roasted. 1/2 a cup of almonds, 1/2 a cup of sunflower seeds, 1/2 cup shredded coconut, 6 tablespoons of carob powder, 1/2 a cup of raisins, 2/3 a cup of honey, and vanilla.
Yeah, good. So what we will do is, normally in this recipe, in the original recipe, we roasted all these 3 nuts, the hazelnuts, the almonds, and the sunflower seeds. But nuts and seeds have some special properties that are stronger when they are not roasted. So after a while, my mom, who is very good at making these recipes, she chose to only roast the hazelnuts and to leave the other nuts unroasted. And the almonds you can even activate by soaking them. So I'll have Lorna to just blend these 4 first ingredients. Even the shredded coconut we will try to make a bit more tiny. Very good. Food processors can sometimes be tricky because some are blending better than others. But in this recipe it doesn't really matter because it will just give it a little bit crunchy thing if the bits and pieces are a bit big. So we'll just add all this into a blending bowl. Thank you. And carob is a wonderful source of calcium, and it's also powerful antioxidant, which is good in all case of sicknesses. So we will add some of the carob. It also gives taste to the recipe and the color partly. Then we are using some honey and some raisins, which we have blended in the food processor before into kind of a little lump. And then we use a little bit of vanilla. You can use according to your taste. And basically, maybe you can just blend this a little bit.
Yes.
And I'll try to add the honey.
You could warm this honey so that it mixes in a little more easily, but we're going to give it, it's not too bad. It's warm in here, isn't it? It's not too
It's better than our Norwegian honey, because that's quite sticky at times. Good. I can admit that normally I would get my hands in here. So that's what you will do at home. You will get your hands in, because to get this properly mixed with this spoon is a challenge. So I'll not even ask you to make it perfectly, because we already know what it will look like, don't we? That was raisins that have been blended in the food processor. And if you want to have a little taste of vanilla, you can add a little bit of vanilla. And I don't think we will endeavor to go further, because normally you would just get your hands in. You can use gloves and just wash your hands and get it all mixed nicely together. And what our kitchen staff have done here to make them look like this is that they have taken 2 pieces of baking paper and just a rolling pin and rolled them in between and then cut them up into slices. And if you want, you can roll them even thinner than this, just very, very thin, and cut them into slices and freeze them. And they will be really like a bite. It will almost be like crunchy like chocolate when you take them directly from the freezer. You can also roll them into balls, and it's a good snack alternative if you have kids who really like to have a special treat in between. Not in between, sometimes, not in between meals, but at times, then it's a really good alternative.